Happy Halloween, everybody. And yeah, okay, I'll admit, I just barely got this video out in time. I know I promised 4 retrospectives out by the end of the month, and hey, I guess 3 out of 4 ain't so bad, but I guess this game is gonna be the de facto true Halloween game. Although I think it has every right to be. It's a perfect fit. So with that, let's take a look at the Mummy Demastered. Yeah, this is a bit of an odd game. Made by WayForward and released in 2017, this is a 2D retro throwback metroidvania. WayForward, of course, being the same company that makes Shantae. And they generally seem to have a ton of experience with pixel art throwback games. So hey, this seems like a perfect fit. Although I will say I'm going into this game a little cynical. Earlier this month I made a video on the game Aliens Infestation, also made by WayForward, which had its moments but I think was a bit of a disappointment. The premise behind this game is unique to say the least. You're part of an organization called Prodigium, who best I can tell is an international military force that investigates supernatural events, and they also seem to be equipped to neutralize them if things go bad. Already I kinda love this premise. Hey, this is for game developers out there. Do not think that the idea of a security task force formed with the explicit purpose of stopping supernatural monsters and paranormal apparitions is oversaturated, because it is not. I think Resident Evil kinda has this trope, although that usually takes a back seat while the player is doing most of the heavy lifting. I think the only other example I can think of is Fear. Ooh, this is kinda creepy. An abandoned underground temple in Iraq. Huh, an Egyptian temple. Okay, so this kinda confused me because we're supposed to be investigating an Egyptian tomb, yet we are all the way over in Iraq. I'll admit, while I am a history buff, I am not an ancient Egypt history buff. Hey, if there are any actual history buffs who are very familiar with ancient Egypt, please let me know if the idea of them traveling to Iraq to build a tomb is accurate in any way. I'd be curious to know. Anyway, we keep exploring and, yep, it's a mummy. I mean, seriously, is anybody surprised by this? Well, they don't seem too happy. Oh shit, zombies and bugs? My worst nightmare. Oh god, I gotta run. Okay, that was just the prologue. Well, either way, I'm getting the impression that whatever we just did was actually really serious. Yeah, look at all these guys. They're all gearing up. Man, I actually love the atmosphere so far. Bunch of cool soldiers suiting up. Hell yeah, let's go stop the monsters. Let's do it. And now we're in the first area. The actual first area. A creepy church at night in a secluded forest with underground catacombs. Oh yeah, I think I made the right call of making this a Halloween episode. It looks like our objective is to search for Princess Amenet. Who's that? Well, I'm gonna guess that she's probably the titular mummy, and she's also probably the chick on the promo art. Also, this is where I'm gonna kinda play it loose with my progress through the game. This game is a metroidvania, and it's a metroidvania in the truest sense possible. Aliens Infestation was a good example of a light metroidvania, with linear levels, scripted areas, and entire chunks of the game sectioned off. That game was pretty much divided into 5 levels. The Mummy is a metroidvania in the sense that the entire map is explorable from this point on. The only thing preventing us from progressing through certain areas are the upgrades we have to unlock. Oh yeah, now this is what I'm talking about. So from this point in the video, it's gonna be a bit of a tour guide through each area. Not really a play-by-play of the game like in my other videos. This is also definitely gonna make this video a little shorter. But I think a little Halloween treat is all we need right now. So with that, let's explore this creepy cemetery. Well, already they seem to have a zombie and crow problem. I've heard that's pretty common in England. You just gotta call the exterminator when this happens. There's no other way to get rid of them. These crows are relentless too. In some cases, they're more dangerous than the actual zombies. And man, these guys just keep on respawning. Respawning enemies isn't a new thing in Metroidvanias. Matter of fact, it's kind of a staple of the genre. But in most Metroidvanias, enemies usually don't respawn until you leave the room and come back. Here they just keep on coming. They just keep on coming. Which, I guess that makes sense for zombies. I don't know, I've killed so many fucking ravens in this game, I can't imagine how bad their population count is gonna be when I'm done with this game. Into the crypt. Yeah, it's just as monster infested as above. Honestly, a crypt is probably the worst place you could be in a zombie apocalypse. A lot of giant rats and grasshoppers down here, which is very annoying. I don't mind the grasshoppers, they're pretty easy to kill. But these rats just keep on respawning. There's also a really extensive cave system full of crystals. Oh man, this is really giving me an SNES vibe. I can't explain it. I think it goes without saying, but just about every single room in this game is a pure work of art. I'll talk about the visuals later. But first, let's discuss the gameplay. Well, it's a Metroidvania, Emphasis on the Metroid. Now, when I looked at reviews for this game, I saw a lot of reviewers, and I mean a lot of reviewers, who kept saying that this game was a combination between Metroid and Castlevania. I just don't know if I'd agree. Now, in fairness, I've played far more Metroid than I have Castlevania, but from playing a lot of Metroid, I can tell that The Mummy is pretty much just a Metroid game, reskinned for a fantasy contemporary setting. It's specifically the fact that this game utilizes the exact same gameplay mechanics and enemy variety that you'd see in any Metroid game. Hell, there's only like 3 mechanics this game adds: weapon selection, weapon ammo, and a different approach to respawning, which I'll get into later. Aside from those 3, I think every single other mechanic in this game is something you'd see straight out of Super Metroid, or maybe Metroid Fusion. I mean, the gothic atmosphere might be considered Castlevania, but that's about the only comparison I can think of. Anyway, this game plays just like a Metroid game. You start off with a gun with unlimited ammo and you're restricted to aiming in 8 directions. You also have a button that locks you in place and lets you aim. And unfortunately, yeah, this is the same rules as a lot of other modern 2D shooters, where there is no dedicated look up or down at an angle button. To do that, you have to aim by holding your joystick in a finicky direction. Other than that minor gripe, I think the controls are actually really solid. You have platforming, rolling, you can throw grenades to unlock blocked off areas. Later in the game, you get access to climbing and a ton of weapons to play around with. Moving and shooting is fast in this game too. Lots of running and jumping around, dodging, chucking explosives, climbing out of the way. Be warned, this is a very fast-paced game. More so than I was expecting for a Metroidvania. But you know what? I don't mind that. It should also go without saying that this game is a little hard, at least maybe for me. Full disclosure, I am fucking terrible at 2D shooters. I'll admit it. So I've always had a weird relationship with the Metroidvania genre, because I love the progression it has. Metroidvanias have an unmatched sense of accomplishment and exploration. I love that feeling of finding a hidden upgrade or unlocking new areas and finding secrets. But as far as Metroidvanias go, I'm utterly terrible at them, I'll admit. You ever eat something super delicious and amazing, yet it's also so friggin' spicy that it burns your mouth and makes your eyes water, and it also does something to your brain where you have trouble even thinking and forming coherent thought? Well, that's me with 2D Metroidvanias. Anyway, the gameplay is intentionally dated, but very solid. So while I'm not the best at it, I still give the gameplay a thumbs up. The Mummy. Well, we're getting close to the first boss. Wow. Oh gee, I wonder what type of monster we're gonna fight. Well, there's cobwebs everywhere. I wonder if that's a clue. Oh hell yeah, let's go, you and me. This is dope. It's actually a shame that the trailer spoiled both this boss and the music track that was used for it. I get wanting to have a hook in your trailer to lure people in, but this could have been an awesome reveal. I'm just looking for something to nitpick. Either way, this section is fucking awesome. His attack pattern is actually pretty easy to get the hang of. Just keep jumping and moving, fire at him from a distance. It's pretty simple. Although this gap to jump across was too damn tricky for me. I kept barely missing the edge. Damn it. Still, this is a quality first boss. It's epic, the music is great, and it's just the right amount of challenging. The next area is more of the same. More underground catacombs. And sadly, it all kind of blends together. I recognize that the very nature of a 2D Metroidvania requires you to pretty much traverse entirely underground, but even still, I would have appreciated some variety in scenery. If I had to give a single complaint, it would be this section of the game, where everything kinda slows down a bit too much. I feel like I should have just been dropped into a brand new zone with new enemies, levels, and environments, but nah, just more endless underground tunnels. Yeah. So while we're on our way to, I guess, nowhere, let's talk about the graphics. I like them. I love me some pixel art graphics, and it seems WayForward is happy to oblige. They love pixel art as much as I do. Although I'm a little nervous that every single Shantae game since the DS has been looking more and more cartoony and flat. Kinda hope that trend will stop soon. Personally, I prefer this pixel art look way more than the newer 2D look that a lot of games have been adopting. But yeah, I love how this game looks. Backgrounds are nicely detailed, levels have some very great colors and aesthetic. It's not quite an authentic retro look. I think there are way too many gradients here to be rendered on an SNES, but it still has a SNES Sega Genesis flair to it. I think it's mainly in the sprite work. Pixel art has become a huge trend in recent years for smaller budget indie or mid-budget games, and I've even seen a lot of people, who I'm probably just going to call contrarians at this point, who are very sick of pixel art, just because it is such a saturated market when it comes to indie games. If I'm being honest, personally, I love it. I love pixel art in authentic retro games. I loved it when it became a small fad many years ago for small, quirky indie games, and now that it's even more popular than ever, basically being adopted by quite a few mid-budget developers as well, it's basically become a dream come true. The thing is, pixel art is a huge, broad art style, and every game can go for its own aesthetic beyond just looking retro. And sure, there are games whose pixel art isn't quite as appealing to me, while other games have pixel art that I just gawk at and consider to be amazing. I think part of it has to do with the sprite work, but that's a discussion for another time. Hey, like all things, there's a nuance to it. I think I appreciate pixel art even more since it's such a simple art style that can go a long way, especially for games with smaller dev teams who may or may not have a non-existent budget for their game. I constantly hear pixel detractors saying that pixel art is cheap and that people need to hop on board with 3D graphics or at least fully drawn and animated 2D graphics, and I heavily disagree with that. I will take a good-looking pixel art game made by 2 or 3 guys any day over a mediocre 3D game with a AAA budget and a very boring photorealistic art style. Hey, I even take that over non-pixelated 2D art. Again, I'm looking at you, Shantae. Seriously, the older DS games actually look better than the more modern releases. What's going on? And the Mummy Demastered is no exception. It has solid art direction, awesome looking sprites, really atmospheric levels, and some beautiful backgrounds that have an excellent level of quality to them. Oh man, these backgrounds. I'd love to have a few of these upscaled to a higher resolution and have it as a wallpaper. It all looks great. I don't even know what else to say. It's just a wonderful art style. Some of these levels really have a mood too, like a cemetery at night or a creepy empty tomb underground. This forest section honestly put me in a trance. That moon in the background, the endless sprawling trees, the colors. Damn, what a great atmosphere. I'm so glad I chose this for Halloween. Oh yeah, the frame rate. I guess I should mention this as well. My footage for the early part of this game may look a little weird to some people, especially if they've played this game before. I think I mention it just about every fucking episode, but I have a 144Hz monitor, letting me experience games at the wondrous frame rate of 144 FPS. So of course, imagine my shock when I boot up this game and it seems to be running perfectly. My character is moving fine, controls seem great, jumping and platforming physics are perfect. Nothing wrong here. So I mistakenly assumed that this game worked fine at a frame rate above 60. Boy was I wrong. Instead, the game is supposed to be locked at 60, but for whatever reason the PC port didn't do that. And people like me with high refresh rate monitors get a game that is playing on 2.4 times speed. Of course, as I just mentioned, everything seemed to be mostly working for me. I did notice the menus were super sensitive, which I just attributed to a sensitivity problem. Happens all the time in PC games. But my first reactions didn't clue me in that something was horribly wrong. Only until I started encountering enemies did I realize my mistake. All the enemies are tied to the game speed, specifically in how they move. I thought it was weird how I was never able to outrun these shambling zombies, or the fact that I never had time to react to these bugs flying at me, or these bats, or these giant locusts. I thought something was fishy, and I was actually just going to attribute this to the game being super hard. But nope, this is literally just me playing the game 2.5 times faster than what the devs wanted. What I find funny is that while most game speed bugs are game breaking, this shockingly wasn't, and it was actually quite doable for a good chunk of the game. If anything, this is just a hidden extra difficulty option for speedrunners. I actually made it a good distance into the game, at least past the first boss. So hey, if I was able to make it this far, I'm sure a pro can make it to the end. I would also like to point out that as of right now, there are currently a handful of 240Hz monitors on the market. So if someone was willing to spend the money, we could have an even harder difficulty mode for something like 4 times speed. Now that would be a difficulty mode. Anyway, capping the game to 60 fixed this. And man, I feel bad for playing a huge chunk of the game like this. Now the game feels perfectly playable, and nowhere near as hard as I thought it was. It's still challenging, sure, but not the mess it was earlier. Well, some more wandering, and we move away from ancient crypts and caves into more industrial looking tunnels. Lots of subway tunnels. Man, I hope we don't run into any anomalies down here. That's the last thing I need. And we get to the next boss. A crocodile dragon looking dude. Alright. He's a little tougher than what I was expecting. Not super difficult, like his attack pattern is very easy to follow and dodge, except because I'm bad, I managed to die anyways. Oh jeez. Oh yeah, this is how respawning works. Kinda like Alien's Infestation, the Mummy handles respawning very differently. When you die in this game, you don't simply restart at your save point. You respawn in as a new soldier. Now this isn't as bad as Aliens because I'm pretty sure you have an infinite number of lives, but this can absolutely be a challenge in and of itself because you respawn without your weapons and upgrades that you unlocked from earlier. Best I can tell, the only upgrades that stick with you are the important equipment upgrades that will let you progress to new areas. Like you can't lose your ability to climb or high jump. So thank God the game doesn't permanently lock you out if you make a really bad mistake. So what you have to do is you have to hunt down your previous soldier who is now zombified and fight them for your gear back, which is easier said than done. He is a bastard to fight and he has all the weapons and equipment that you had when you died. I'm lucky that I didn't die all that often. Thank God that the game is forgiving enough to put my zombified body outside the boss room so I don't get double teamed at the same time. But even still, this is such a weird inclusion. Hey, way forward. Why? Why are you obsessed with rethinking the respawn system? I felt like Super Metroid nailed it almost 30 years ago. You die, you simply respawn back at your save point. It's like a reset. I get the impression with how WayForward did this for Aliens 2 that they're really trying to just experiment and make changes for the sake of making changes. Well, I finally get my gear back and I fight him one more time. And yeah, knowing his attack pattern, he's not too bad. Also, with this boss and every other boss in this game, I have to point out how great the game handles them. I've mentioned in the past how I hate boss fights where it just feels like you're fighting a bullet sponge, and half the time you don't even know how much damage you're doing to them, so sometimes it feels like you're just chopping away at a tree stump. I think the Mummy is a good example of what I want for a boss fight, especially in regards to visual indicators. There is no health bar in this game. Rather, the enemy itself has a color scheme that becomes more and more red the lower its health is. To me, this is perfect. So the boss is tough, but I don't feel like I'm fighting a giant brick wall with no sense of how much I'm hurting them. Great boss fights. Actually, that's a good point for how I see most of this game. Where it's hard in parts, it's not unfairly hard. I've played a lot of games that just really had unfair difficulty spikes that feel like they had no sense of pacing or skill curve to them. So this game is a breath of fresh air. It's hard, but balanced. But do you know what else goes hard? The music. Oh yeah, it's just too good to ignore. You guys are in for a Halloween treat this year. Music is always kind of a nice addition to a game, but it's never a requirement. I like plenty of games that have a terrible or non-existent soundtrack. But the Mummy Demastered? Oh yeah, this music rocks. I think this is actually a great example of why music can completely elevate a game more often than not. Like give a game a really awesome mood or feel. This music was composed by a guy called Monomer, and I am thankful for this game for introducing me to him. It sounds like 80s synth combined with 8-bit chiptunes with a little bit of gothic horror mixed in. I don't know much about music composition, so I probably sound like a simpleton talking about it, but either way, the music is fucking awesome. I can't get enough of it. I especially love this piece. It plays when you're fighting the bosses and it's an awesome tune. Something about it just pumps me up. And like I said, it was also used in the trailer for the game. Honestly, this part of the trailer right here is the only hook anyone should need just to check the game out. Awesome visuals, a guy shooting at all kinds of monsters, and this music. God damn. This was all I needed to get interested in this game. The rest of the music is really solid too, shockingly atmospheric. Most of this game is set in creepy catacombs anyway, and the ambiance just helps emphasize it. It's hard to pull off good spooky music, much less in an 8-bit chiptune style, but damn does the Mummy deliver. And thankfully, this isn't the only album the composer's made. He's made a ton of his own albums over the years, and if I'm being honest, I actually think The Mummy might be one of his most tamer scores. You can buy some of his albums right off iTunes, but he also has a Bandcamp, which I'm gonna link in the description. So yeah, happy Halloween. Well, we do some more wandering through these underground tunnels where we end up in this sort of laboratory or underground base. These brains are a really fun enemy idea, although I'm not really liking these piranhas. During this part, we also get a couple new weapons. The guns we had earlier were pretty alright, an assault rifle that does a bit more damage than our default one, and a pretty decent short-range shotgun. In this part of the game though, we unlock a mercury harpoon, which sounds as metal as it feels, and a flamethrower. The harpoon gun is great. Slow-moving projectiles, high damage, and can insta-kill most enemies. Also, this thing kinda reminds me of the Penetrator from Fear. I'm sold. And I am happy to report that the flamethrower is indeed fucking amazing. Yeah, when I was complaining about the flamethrower in Aliens Infestation, this is what I meant. Look at how far that flame reaches, and check out that damage. Well, we do a bit more wandering. I don't even know where we are. It doesn't look like we're in the catacombs anymore. It's like we're inside some underground high-tech base or something. And we also get another boss fight. Ah, jeez. And after that, we do a bit more exploration until we finally get to the surface. Damn, we are now in the middle of London where a sandstorm has hit. Oh man, this is pretty rad. I was worried that the game would keep me down in the sewers the entire time, but damn, this is a pretty sweet reveal. I don't know how we traveled from some secluded forest with crypts and caves to downtown London in the span of a couple hours, but hey, I'm not complaining. God damn, this is really cool. Very apocalyptic, which raises a good point. Haven't we already lost at this point? Like, the whole city has been turned into zombies. That's a game over in my book. At this point, I'd say conventional military insertion tactics have already failed. I'd probably be dropping bombs at this point, maybe even a nuke if we're desperate enough. Like, this is an entire city. London is pretty big, and if something like this was able to take out that city this quickly, chances are it's potentially world-ending. Yeah, I wouldn't be taking any chances. I guess that makes me one of those bad guys you see in zombie movies who wants to resort to extreme measures right away. I get that. I guess we still have a mission to do. Still, this area seems a little familiar. I can't quite place it, but I'm getting deja vu. The Mummy. Oh, wait! This is the Mummy! Yeah, the Mummy. No, not that one. No, not that one. That one. That 2017 Tom Cruise movie where they tried to make a Marvel Cinematic Universe out of the Universal monsters? Yeah, that movie. This is a tie-in game. I'll admit, it's kind of shocking to know that this is a movie licensed game. I'd expect something a little more generic, like a third-person shooter or platformer or brawler, like one of those kinds of games. Those are super cheap and easy to dump out. Not something this intricate and, dare I say, full of soul. Anyways, I haven't actually seen The Mummy, but literally every single review about it says it's terrible and awful, so I have no reason to doubt it. It was actually directed by Alex Kurtzman. For those of you who have no idea who Alex Kurtzman is, I guess I'll give a little context. He's generally a producer or screenwriter, and sometimes he'll do both on the same movie. And he's also notorious for being one of the worst filmmakers in the industry, at least in the last 15 years. I'm hesitant on saying he's the worst of all time. I think Ed Wood holds that top spot. But when it comes to big budget studio films and big budget TV shows made in the last decade or two, I do think Kurtzman is unparalleled when it comes to awful writing. He's done a lot too, and just by looking at his IMDb will show how he's responsible for quite literally some of the worst, borderline unwatchable movies and shows out there. He's also basically in charge of Star Trek these days, because while everyone remembers J.J. Abrams directing the Star Trek films, it was Kurtzman here who produced them and helped write their screenplays. He's basically the reason why Star Trek has been awful for the last decade. Anyway, looking at IMDb, I've also found that he's apparently still attached to 5 new movies that, judging by the titles alone, I'm guessing have to do with that stupid Universal Monsters cinematic universe. There's apparently a Dracula movie, they're gonna try that again, a Frankenstein movie, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Phantom of the Opera, and Van Helsing. Although these have only been announced, God knows whether or not they'll actually make it to pre-production. The Mummy was kind of a flop, and I think it pretty much killed the cinematic monster universe. Also, while I haven't seen The Mummy, I actually have seen quite a few of the movies Kurtzman has produced, along with a couple shows that I ended up dropping. People said the newer Star Trek shows weren't that bad, and despite my better judgment, I tried to watch a few episodes, and oh my god, I don't think I've watched television quite that bad before. So yeah, Kurtzman might be the worst filmmaker in the industry right now. Everything he's made is pretty much garbage. Also, yeah, I'm sorry everybody. Even in a Halloween video about The Mummy, I still had to mention Star Trek. I'm sorry. But yeah, judging by his credentials, I'm only guessing that The Mummy is as bad as his other stuff. I will say, the idea of a Universal Monster movie cinematic universe isn't the worst idea. Although I think the premise for it in The Mummy was pretty stupid. Having it in the modern day with the tone of a generic action blockbuster was a bad idea. I think it works in a video game here because it's not meant to be serious. Also, the game doesn't really focus on characters like Tom Cruise or Russell Crowe, but instead on just a bunch of cool soldier dudes whose job it is to fight monsters. But in a movie that takes itself super seriously, yeah, this doesn't really mesh well. I actually think the movie probably should have been set in like the 1800s, in like old European villages and castles or something. Make it all gothic and old-timey. Although, as I'm saying this, I'm immediately remembering the fact that they tried this already with the movie Van Helsing. Now that movie came out years before the MCU, but it was still kind of attempting the same thing by combining tons of monsters together into a single world, like vampires, werewolves, and Frankenstein. That movie was pretty bad. Hack writing, lots of early 2000s tropes, and pretty bad CGI. That movie has not aged well. But I will say that black and white intro with Frankenstein is the single best thing about the movie, and it is a million times better than the rest of the movie itself. Seriously, that might be some of the best Frankenstein stuff in any movie ever. If only the rest of the film was that good. This clock tower is really messing me up. You see, these turning gears move you in the direction they're spinning, so all of a sudden platforming becomes really fucking annoying. Oh god. Same with the boss too. We have to fight a giant scarab while he flies around the room. God damn, these gears are messing me up. Eventually I get a hang of it, and yeah, he's not too hard after that. I am lucky that I managed to get through this whole section. I have no idea how I managed to pull it off. After this though, the game kinda lets us do a lot of backtracking. We get an upgrade that lets us go underwater, so we can finally back travel to all these areas that we missed earlier. And I'd say that this is absolutely necessary. You gotta get yourself some of the best weapons and gear in the whole game. Specifically, a rocket launcher and a plasma beam. Jesus Christ. This thing feels like a fucking proton pack from Ghostbusters. No joke, this is the best weapon in the whole game. Plus you combine that with all these ammo upgrades and this thing becomes a beast. But yeah, the rest of the game is pretty much set inside these dark catacombs. I kinda preferred apocalyptic London. Honestly, I'd love an entire game here, but alas, I guess not. Actually, these underwater areas are pretty nice. Also, guys, an upgrade that lets you jump around while underwater. Gee, could this game perhaps be inspired by Metroid? Also down here we have to face off against a bunch of old possessed Templar Knights. Okay. But yeah, more wandering, more tunnels that all kind of blend together. I will say the one thing that saves this part of the game is the music. Yeah, this is probably my favorite track so far. And I will say this part of the game really opened up. This is the first time where you finally have all the upgrades, so you can just go backtrack across the map hunting down secrets. This is great. I actually spent quite a bit of time exploring too. Honestly, a lot of the times when playing a Metroidvania, I'll be a little focused on simply getting to the end, but here I found myself just kinda having fun being lost in this world. Hey, this game scratched that Metroidvania itch I've had since Aliens Infestation. That game kinda dropped the ball. Also, this game does something I don't think I've seen in a Metroidvania, in that it has upgrades that you can totally miss if you're not careful enough. And these are upgrades that you do not need for the rest of the game. Specifically this air dash ability, which really helps with the platforming. Honestly, it made the whole game after I found it a complete cakewalk. But this is something that I didn't need to beat the game. I could have beaten it without it. So yeah, kind of a neat inclusion. Upgrades that are not required to progress and are just kind of hidden out of the way. I like that idea. Well, we're getting close to the end, so I should probably mention the level design before I forget. Yeah, it's very Metroid, and I think I'm feeling specifically Super Metroid here. It's areas that are all sectioned off with little routes in between connecting them. This game also introduces helicopters. These are essentially fast travel points that are only on the surface that allow you to choose which other landing zone you want to travel to. There's only a handful of them, so they're not that big of a deal, but they are pretty helpful in getting across the map quickly. Otherwise, the layout for most areas are pretty much the same. Open outdoor area, sprawling underground or interior catacombs, lots of tall vertical rooms where you have to navigate up and down through a lot of platforming. Also, lots of platforming. It's to be expected for a Metroidvania. This is made even more annoying by the fact that you have to contend with enemies that are either running towards you or throwing shit at you, which will knock you off a platform if you're not careful enough. But hey, tying back into what I said earlier, there is a hidden upgrade in this game that totally gets rid of knockback, meaning that if an enemy manages to hit you, you still don't get knocked off the ledge. That's kind of neat. As for the map layout itself, well, I think even with all the backtracking, it still has a pretty good pace. This isn't that long of a game, but you can spend a lot of time just exploring and trying to 100% it. I didn't 100% this game, but I got pretty close. 92%. That's not too bad. And I felt like the pace of the game was pretty solid. It wasn't too confusing, but it also wasn't too linear. Kind of the perfect balance. Alright, well there's only one thing left to do. We have to finally face off against Princess Amenet, the final boss. She's not too bad. She just teleports around, throws fireballs at you, and spawns zombies to harass you, which I would complain about, except these guys are a godsend for regaining health and ammo. Also, I have a ton of upgrades at this point. Bunch of ammo upgrades, some damage upgrades, and a lot of health. I am so glad I went out of my way to hunt down the extra health. Oh my god. It's a pretty okay boss fight. She doesn't have that much health, of course, because I'm quickly able to... Oh. Wait. Shit. Yeah. Now this is worthy of a final boss. I don't even know what we're fighting. A satanic disembodied skull? Some sort of demon? Who cares? We gotta blow it up. This fight is a little harder than she was. Still, this is sufficiently epic. Even the music feels like something ripped straight out of Doom 2016. Listen to it. It sounds very McGordon, at least to me. This guy, you just have to spam all of your ammo until he's dead. Everything you got, explosives, rockets, use it all up. There is no tomorrow. Hey, thank God for my proton pack. Well, after a bit of determination, I finally kill him. Hell yeah. I know not how you persist, but this shall be your tomb. That's ominous. Oh, and the cave's now collapsing in on us. Well, great. Oh God, I gotta run. Oh man, these jumping puzzles are not fun when you have rocks falling on your head. I don't want to die down here. I want to live and be a hero. Come on, just a little further. Oh, made it. We did it. We beat the game. We stopped the mummy. Yeah, look at this guy. If you guys ever wonder how I feel after editing a bunch of videos in a row, this is me right here. Hey Andy, you just edited your Halo Infinite review. How do you feel? This. Just like this. That's how I feel. And that's it. The game cuts to credits. The Mummy! This game was interesting. It had difficult moments, really awesome Metroidvania gameplay, and I kinda love it. It's a fantastic Metroidvania. It's challenging in the right places, the gameplay is great. Overall, it's just a fun throwback game that had no reason to be made. Movie license games are almost always terrible. Back in the day, there used to be a ton of them, and they'd just be bad shovelware. Nowadays, I don't think they're really made all that often. Usually they're just terrible free-to-play mobile games, or the movie will just do a tie-in with Fortnite like everyone else. So movie license games have a bad reputation. But I'm putting my foot down and saying that this is probably the best one I've seen to date. I have never seen a video game tie-in to a movie have more effort and soul put into it than the actual movie itself. And this is all for a fucking Tom Cruise mummy movie. It's the equivalent of a college classroom full of students just doing the bare minimum for their project, and WayForward is the one kid who went above and beyond, putting in so much effort into his project that the professor is starting to wonder if WayForward could have just spent that energy elsewhere. Like, dude, come on, this is a movie tie-in game. You're not supposed to put this much effort into it. Go make your own game instead with your own IP. That'll make you more money. This might be the only case I've seen where the video game tie-in is a million times better than the movie it's adapting. Seriously, I can't think of anything else. Either way, I'm not complaining, because I get a great game to play for Halloween. Movie licensed game or not, a good game is a good game. I know WayForward still has their Shantae series going on, which is pretty much their main 2D Metroidvania franchise at the moment, but I think some type of spiritual successor to this game could be warranted. Honestly, there are gameplay mechanics in this that I prefer over Shantae. The guns, the ammo systems, the level design and environments, even just the tone of it was awesome. Now for me, it was definitely hard. This was a game that I had to keep at it for a while just to beat it. But I'm someone who's bad at Metroidvanias, even though I like them. So I'm betting that even though it's difficult for complete newbies like me, some Super Metroid expert who's beaten every Metroid game on 100% could absolutely breeze through this game no problem. I think I do need to stress that. I had a few little nitpicks and gripes, but this game is fantastic. Absolutely going onto my list of Halloween classics. It's been a while since I've stumbled upon something this good before. Not to mention that this is perfect for the season too. Hey, by the time this video should be going out, it should be Halloween. So I do urge everyone to check it out. It's a little pricey at 20 bucks, but if you can catch it in a sale, I'd say go for it. But yeah, that's all I have to say. What a fun game. You know, I thought this Halloween would be kind of ruined by all the mediocre games I've been playing lately, but this one genuinely lifted my spirits. Awesome Metroidvania and the perfect game for Halloween. But for now, I hope you all have a happy Halloween. I mean it, seriously. Take care, you guys. I'll see you next time.